Good morning, Thursday, February 26th, back in house transportation. We heard two pieces of testimony this morning related to kind of sort of the current situation on speed limits and how speed limits can or cannot be adjusted in the state of Vermont, and on at least 6 different levels of speed limit issues and kind of where that road is. And then we also talked about transportation alternatives program and regarding to the transportation alternative programs and the water quality programs to break down the money and the limits. And what I'm looking, at least for a little bit here, or to any open amount of discussion, where the committee wants to go or not on what you've heard. And I don't think we really finished the full conversation on sort of people's position on what we'd heard from earlier testimony in the regional planning commissions and your own town experiences. And I think we have an idea of where we might go, but I want to kind of hear if there's more, we can kind of pick that up. I thought I had heard from the agency that they would say that, and I also thought we heard alleged counsel still in the room, that the law is kind of a little unclear. It's not a simple area. I think that Representative Keyser teed it up actually the best there and talking about there's an awful lot of layers, or it's been layered over time in terms of there was a rule and then there was added on to, and then there was some changes as different designations came along, and it sort of piled onto it. But now with the land use directions, it's what's it? I think you wanted to Damien say if it's not mentioned, then that's meant to assume that this is the way to go about it. I mean, that sounds confusing enough to me. I don't know. So that's where I wanted to start from, I guess. And Representative Keyser talked a little bit about the layers. And I'm looking to say more thoughts on it, more concerns from your town, and then sort of what's the direction that we may or may not want to go in. And I think the agency at least said that from their perspective, it could use some clarity, but and perhaps some more work. So thoughts. I don't know if I call on you there, Representative Keyser, but you sort of put us at a spot where I said we're going to leave off on what you had last said and then try to pick up from there. You can kind of get us back to where we were.
Thank you, Chair. When Dan Noyes came and spoke, I started doing research and I ran into all of this. I was like, this is impossible. You can't, nobody can, anyway, well, many people can't. So I would suggest, and based on the conversations we had with Jeremy, that we might ask the agency to come back with us next year. I guess they asked for more time to be able to understand how to go forward, or at least maybe Damien would want more time. But I would suggest that we try to clean up the language and come to some type of understanding of what allows us to change our speed limits. Because I'm not clear at all. I mean, I know some of the process, but as Jeremy talks about, we could, under some conditions, be in conflict with federal regs. So we want to make sure we clear that up. So that's my comments.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely concur with that, needing to do more of maybe a study aspect of it, but within that study, I think we should give the agency direction of what they should look at. And I really think just having 3 members, that's a lot of power, so should we expand that? Should we put somebody from, I think
No, that's okay.
Representative House's ideas, but
Put Tim Parker back on.
my
ideas. Way better coming from you.
expand it, put on regional planning commissions, to put on
Yeah,
all
I
these
think
towns
the
of city.
regional planning should be there.
And maybe weight what they should really be looking at, consider the safety aspect of it, and sort of direct that framework for them to come back with us and give us a package next year. But that would be my thoughts.
Well, now that's got the hands going.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go here and here and here.
Piggyback on that. I mean, it worries me, and we have examples of, there's 3 people on that board from VTrans. They decide what it is. There's no, alternative. And, I don't know, Heinsberg has struggled to get things through there. And it might be good just to have a couple other voices there speaking for the planning commission or Vermont League of Cities and Towns to get sort of a mix on there. I think that, if we're just going to talk about that for now, that I think seems like a reasonable thing. And at the same time, study all the regulatory things to make sure we don't get ourselves into trouble. Although I think the example he gave, he agreed, wasn't a real example, but it's, potential, I guess. So that, if we can just at least simplify things, keeping it the same, but it's easier to figure out who does what. That might also be appropriate. I mean, the reason we're talking about this, we've all been sort of saying, hey, this is an issue for towns and villages. And then we got, backup by all the planning, regional planners who came in and said, hey, this is what our towns want. They don't, they just want to be able to have a livable town, a walkable town, and that requires, maybe lower speed limits. And probably, I would throw better enforcement.
Yeah, I think I'm interested in this idea of like a holistic approach and how what are the opportunities to coordinate more purposefully with Act 181 and the designation program, and how can we help to ensure that the multimodal guidance addresses that sort of tension that I think is the challenge from the agency standpoint and the municipality standpoint, which is, programmatic support for things, but it challenges with on the street kind of level design that are needed by the communities to be implemented. And how can that become something that is, simpler for everybody to pursue, ideally less expensive too. The guidance, my understanding is will provide sort of a menu of options so that we can move beyond the, I think Jeremy described Danville as the Cadillac version, that sort of gold plating is it's, nice if you can get it, but we can't afford to, the cost of that was crazy. So we need, cheaper, quicker, more effective ways and at the same time balance. We don't want to jeopardize the federal funds. So it's a complex thing. And I'm thinking that a study that we are very focused about what we want to get out of it would be very helpful.
Yeah, I like the idea of expanding it. I like the idea of adding the regional planners because they have the local perspective and the expertise as well. And I'm wondering, when we've been hearing how it's not just the speed limit that's going to change it, how do we also incorporate the other street improvements that need to be done? Is there some way to, set aside a pot of money for that within that program or within that review to, how can you put it in a crosswalk or narrow the lanes or whatever it is. So a great idea, Tim.
I'm not, I'll shut everybody down. So Representative McCoy and then Representative Moore.
So I think AOT has the expertise, like, the calming, the verbiage that I'm saying about the federal government. It's the calming implements that you put into place. It's not the signage. So I think we absolutely need them there, but I think the Regional Planning Commission or VLCT will add to the conversation because they're boots on the ground and they see what happens, in communities. I really hesitate to have yet another committee set up. Is there some way we could do this like informally? It's just one more committee.
I hear you. I have an idea about that,
Okay.
which we'll get to, but we're gonna go to Representative White.
Okay, so I just did a quick Google search and see that there's a setting speed limits, a guide for Vermont towns document from 2016 on the Vermont government website, which is a 31-page document. I guess I would love to see this information in like a 2-page summary so that it's clear to towns kind of what the procedures are. I mean, Jeremy and Damian just took us through that, but it's a bit confusing. There's a lot of criteria for the different designations. I don't know whether towns are going to read a 10-year-old report that's 31 pages, but like a 2-page summary could be helpful. I also really like Representative Lally's suggestion that, how do we make this easy for towns? Like, so the idea of here's how to do this for towns that they can opt out of it, or just like, and I don't know the answer, but how do we make it easy for towns? Because I think we are seeing a lot of evidence from towns. They are asking for guidance and how to make this easier.
I'm not sure if I sort of want to keep the hands up or whatever. This may sound a little bit in the other direction of where you're going in terms of, I don't know how easy is a word, but it means different things to different people. On the part of the concern about the traffic committee, on the opposite end of that, I also have a concern that if our chief engineer's example is true, that the 3-person select board in Roxbury could put 12A down to 5 miles an hour with no other interaction from the agency and for the people that use that highway. That sounds like an awful lot, almost too much power in the other direction with no influence and balance on that decision making. What if we're saying that it's too imbalanced for the DMV and the transportation secretary and the public safety, the 3 of them with no representation from the other side, the idea that Roxbury could put Route 12A down to 5 miles an hour without any input from the agency is got to be equally unbalanced.
It wasn't a real example.
Yeah.
I can come up with something just as crazy on the other side. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I mean, there's a point there, I agree.
Okay, so
You have a
if it's some other town that wants to put it down to 20 or 25, if the agency and the DMV and the public safety don't have an input on that particular speed zone, that doesn't sound balanced, I guess. So if I appreciate that, maybe that's, I don't think anybody wants to go to 5 miles, or hope they don't want to go to 5 miles an hour, but use a different example, whatever it is. If we're saying it's unbalanced on one side with no representation, we've got to be able to say it's unbalanced on the other side. But that doesn't mean we want sort of the authoritative, somebody's got to be the end all, and that usually ends up in court. But anyway, to me, that stood out as that's not balanced on either end.
No, correct. And I think that's why you want a more cohesive traffic.
Right, and maybe, and you could potentially say, the traffic committee can, if a municipality makes a change, they could take it up. Not necessarily approve them all, but take it up if there's concerns.
And, Act 181.
If it was a balanced committee.
Is providing that common vision of what we want these places to look like. So there's that predictable sense of where we want to head with this, which I think kind of reins in a lot of this, so that that I hope mitigates the agency's, risk aversion, and which I appreciate, their concern with the Service Reauthorization Act. And there's a lot that they're very rightly concerned about, not jeopardizing. But I think there is some balance there. And again, would suggest that it might be helpful for the committee to just have a look at, to take some testimony on what other states are doing, to kind of have this more finer grained approach in the places where they've decided they want to focus housing and economic development, so they can have these nice things and a functioning network highway network system too.
I'd also want to emphasize that perhaps I didn't say it clearly enough. People in charge with our motorist safety related to enforcement and the vehicles moving on those roads should have, it should have some say over the traveling public that's coming through that road. And maybe that would make it more clear that in addition to the agency, the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Department of Public Safety are in charge of the safety of our motorists. They deserve a say on what speed limits are appropriate and not appropriate, but not an overall necessarily, that overall veto idea of it, I didn't really, that's a concern, but I should probably push in the safety direction as well. They should have an influence over what rate of speed vehicles are allowed to travel, at least some say. In that particular part.
Yeah, no, obviously, I don't think anybody's saying taking them off, we're just saying that too.
Well,
Yeah.
but they are not on the transit, the.
Oh, they are.
On the
Public
last part.
safety,
There is a
Public
public safety.
safety,
public
person on there.
safety,
EMV.
EMV.
I'm saying under
and
under the, isn't it, if you become a designated downtown?
Oh, you're talking about the other.
Yeah, you don't have to be involved in
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's a concern. To me, is what's like in a designated downtown, designated neighborhood, the people responsible for the safety of the vehicles going through there should have some level of say. Is what I would push on, what I was trying to get at, is more balanced that portion of those two areas at the end. If there were 6 columns of things that happen, there were the 2 at the end that have no, that are gonna be the idea that they can just go ahead and do it. That doesn't sound right to me.
Well, perhaps, Mr. Chair, we could look at that. I'm a little concerned about communities that have gone through all of that very intentional work, then having somebody arbitrarily decide that maybe this is not safe for them. Meanwhile, they've gone through a lot of work to implement and pay for some of this themselves, design conditions that do lower the speeds and things like that. So there's got to be some kind
I would
of.
hope they're in that process somewhere, I guess.
Well,
is what- if it's the-
Well, perhaps, this is what I mean about setting really clear expectations. And then it could become almost like a checklist. You do these things, you're good to go. But there's got to be agreement about what those expectations are. And, that's how you make a predictable system that people can feel confident signing off on, right? So, right now we have a predictable system that people feel confident signing off on that is focused on getting cars as quickly as possible from A to B. And what we're trying to do is add that finer grained approach so that in the places where we want to have people living and fiscally productive streets, we have those opportunities too. So, to me, that seems like kind of what we're, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do.
Representative McCoy?
I think Representative White's plan of having just like a 1-page or 2-page or so municipalities. And when if there's going to be a committee, or if it's the existing committee adding a couple of members to it, that municipalities can look at it and go, okay, check, we did that, check. And if there needs to be a drive-by through AOT, then let them look at it, because ultimately, if they are in charge of the safety and well-being of travelers on roads, then yes, they should have a look at it. But I really like the idea, and that's kind of like the one-stop shopping thing. Can we just have it so we don't make it so hard for municipalities or members of the public to do anything in the state? Why can't we just have a checklist? Go down.
That may require, well, putting the list together, we may want to change the language as to how it's all handled to make it simpler. On top, you have a checklist of what it is today, but we are saying that we probably want it to be different than, perhaps it should be different than it is, right? That's what we're sort of, along that, Representative McCoy's point of that and the earlier one in terms of, we have from last year's T-bill, a 2-year program that's going on between the RBCs, the leases and towns, the agency on trying to make the grant programs and processes simpler and less of them perhaps are more concise about how pieces are. We also have them working on the project related to how would you quantify and inventory the entire need of towns and assets that are out there. I believe we have them also working on a third sort of transportation. All the players that we need are all already on a couple of different committees. I don't know, as the ether listens to what we're talking about here. If they're already coming together, there's various transportation related programs. What we're asking for also needs to be paid for or granted in through these transportation alternatives, bike ped, sidewalk projects. If we're talking about, they sort of go together, right? We want traffic calming and bumps. They're paid through some of these, and of course from their local own money, but they're paid for through some of these programs. We're looking at how to simplify those programs, and we're looking at how to address this. There's some way that we should be able to, without creating a new study committee, find a way to add a language or instruction that says something about pick this up and come back with recommendations.
Add an additional charge to what we already gave them.
I could do that, and I mean, policy plan, I mean, they have money set aside for these, I mean, I don't know what it's down to, when we can get that number, but, and they do have money in the budget for doing these things. So.
And I would just add to that, maybe we insert some intent language, just kind of with this vague idea that we want to make this easier for towns to achieve safe traffic calming areas. It's something to that effect.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so I just want to recognize that we are kind of a little betwixt in between because the multimodal guidance is still being worked upon, but it seems like this intent idea is really important because there's low-hanging fruit that we can do right now. It's not perfect, it's not everything we want it to be, but we can kind of, if this is an ocean liner, we're shifting it just a degree, that you end up in maybe a different continent, at the end of the day, right? So I think that's the way to sort of look at it. Like, what are the things that we can do right now? It sounds like there's agreement on it's too overly complex. It's also challenging. And I know this from a little bit of personal experience through my work with one of the RPCs. The 1111 process, it's not a picnic for AOT either. It's complicated what they're trying to do. So they're trying to make a process that is kind of not really suited for being able to make these determinations work. And, but what are some of the simple things that we could do now to make this better for everybody as we work towards this fuller vision, which I think is where we're headed. And I think that's where the other committees of jurisdiction are trying to, a lot of people are trying to move Act 181 too. So kind of think of it as a trajectory. But, I think one of the most important things we can do as a committee is integrate this with the broader land use goals of this body. And so we are in more coordination with the other committees of jurisdiction, because my feeling has been that, there's been this, that hasn't necessarily been happening. So.
I guess I would ask, Damien, all these thoughts are collecting, and we're going to be looking to sort of bring the agency back into the conversation. And I guess it's the direction of our VCs and broadly cities and towns about what we might be able to draft and consider sort of to address this issue that we, whoever sitting in these seats next session, would have some information about and understanding our intent that addressing speed limits, traffic calming, safety in towns, in designated development areas, designated neighborhoods, needs to be more clear and perhaps more balanced, and might require some statutory changes that we would want the committee that passes after us to really take a look at. Does that sort of sum it up? No? Yeah. Right?
Yeah, just thinking through like the process, could we request a 2-page summary of the way it currently is now, and perhaps an effective date. Not June, but April, like something soon, just asking for like not a lot, but just like here, let's have the summary of what's currently in statute. We can review that. And with the idea that, perhaps, was it next session, we would make adjustments to that. But the 2-page summary is state our intent, ask for the 2-page summary. With the idea that we would then probably ask for some changes next year, or with, kick it to the study committee that's working on some other things already. I'm just trying to think of like, so that we don't have to wait a year or 6 months to get this pretty simple document that we want to share for ourselves and also with towns to kind of demystify the process where we are right now.
You're just talking about like a request, not something that you bill, you just want, yeah.
Well, and whether we put
No,
that,
I
guess
think
I'm not-
that could be accomplished, just ask,
Right.
an email.
without putting it in the bill.
I am,
Correct, yeah, I think.
I would
that
think
honor-
that from what you're putting 1 or 2 of our members together with the agency and our ledge council, we could probably draft something of that nature without making it to the level of bill.
Well, not that draft, just ask them.
You know what I'm saying?
They're probably listening now.
Right, but I'm saying when they. I think what I'm saying is that
Are you getting this?
Sam White has a clear picture of what she wanted to look like.
Yeah.
If they would invite her to that particular discussion, it would help her get what she
Oh,
wanted.
yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
And I don't think I'm the only person who wants that.
No, you just have to be the one pushing it right now. Somebody would have to, that has a clear vision of what they want. It would help them draft that. We don't need a law to do that. We have people that are supposed to support us. Yes, sir.
And sort of to build on that, another 2-pager that a municipality could get that would show them, here are all the ways to do traffic calming. That, and for this, these grants are available and these are the 3 or 4 or 5 methods that you can use besides reducing the speed limit. Because, we know just reducing the speed limit isn't necessarily going to do it. Here are the other ways to do it. Because, like for Heinsberg, we don't own the road. Or, to get an 1111 permit
Exactly.
to do a bump out, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just isn't gonna happen. But, maybe traffic calming speed signs might be something the town would be willing to do. So here's the price range, here's what we recommend. Here's if you wanna put some bump outs or on-street parking, here are 5 or 6 things you could consider, and here's avenues to get it done. Right now, I don't know that other than the planning commission, our regional plan
Nations can have that.
can't help, yeah.
And I can,
Sorry. That's okay.
Real
quick, I just wanted to say that, V-Trans is very, very accomplished at controlling the speeds when they need to do work in their right of way. And so I would suggest that this offers an array of opportunities for that could be covered under an 1111 permit for demonstrating in a community the benefits of having slower speeds. So some of this is, I'm concerned about some of the smaller places that aspire to this, but are feeling completely overwhelmed. And that is the kind of thing that RPCs would be perfect for handling, like a 2-week demonstration. What would it be like to have a crosswalk here? Or slower, narrower lanes that maybe you could actually walk in some of those, on your state highway. What would that feel like? So they have the opportunity to kind of get in the queue and become, that kind of a place in the future, which obviously, we have to figure out how to pay for all this, that kind of thing. But to give them a taste of that, I think is really important.
so I know they're still in the draft stage, I think, but that complete streets design Aaron, the engineer from AOT, presented several weeks back. I'm not quite sure when that's finally going to get the okay, but that seems like it would be a great asset to municipalities to use for this particular block that we're having here. because it was all about, she spoke about calming, traffic calming and, using trees and like Chester, I remember she brought up Chester and what they did. So there are things there. I think that's what perhaps Representative White's two-pager can say, check this out and have a hyperlink to the complete streets whenever it finally does become not a draft and
Okay, we are adjourned for lunch break. We're back at 1:15. And we're gonna have a conversation this afternoon about this transportation alternative piece that we heard testimony on earlier, also as far as. what we
You
want
got
to do.
Burlington too, right?
Burlington first, and then we're coming in.